All right, guys, welcome to the Short Term Rental Pro podcast. Today, I'm super excited to be joined by one of my good friends in the space, Mike Chang. Honestly, if I'm going to be completely frank, Mike has probably taught me more like ideas than pretty much about anybody in terms of like taxes and how to maximize post tax cash flow. Is really not a thing I thought about much before. I just thought about that income, that top line, the revenue. But Mike, what he's really good at and very precise about is I guess what's most important, and that's after taxes, how much you're stacking away and how impactful that is to the growth of your portfolio on the long run when you're saving money. So I really want to touch on that today, but really, guys, just so excited to have Mike here. Thank you so much for coming.
Hey, Jeremy, thanks a lot. I've learned a ton from you as well over the last few years. We've known each other now. So really happy to be a guest here on the pod and look forward to telling the story.
Awesome, guys. So Mike is he doesn't only do one Airbnb strategy. He does rental arbitrage. He is now up to, Mike, how many arbitrage units do you now have in Philly?
25.
25, as well as he has an ownership portfolio in the Smoky Mountains of, I think, 6. I feel like I know too much about you. 6 properties in the Smoky Mountains.
Yeah. We have 25 rental arbitrage properties in Philadelphia, and we have 6 that we own in the Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee. And we have one long-term rental in Philly, but that's more for tax. It's like a legacy thing.
Got it. Okay. And what I think is unique and again, we're going to dive in today is Mike's precise underwriting and using a combination of strategies to, again, maximize that post cash tax flow. So Mike, tell everyone your background and kind of how you got to be kind of one of the leaders of just pinpoint underwriting and all that financing jazz that you do on a daily basis.
You're far too kind. I appreciate the introduction.
He is shorter than me. Mike is shorter than me. Just got to knock him off of an inch. Complimenting him too much right now. We went back to back. I'm a half inch taller. But
He is. It's rare that I meet. It's so funny story. So when I met Jeremy a few years ago, a year and a half ago. First time I met him, going to his apartment, I walk into his apartment, open the door, and I was like, "What?" And then I kind of took a step back because usually when I meet someone, I'm usually eye level or like I look a little below, and I had to look up to see him. I was like, "Oh crap, he's taller than me." But then I had to make sure he wasn't wearing like boots or something to give himself an advantage. But no, he truly is half an inch taller than me. But so I come from a finance background. I was an investment banker, an M&A investment banker here in New York at Citi and BNB Merrill Lynch for 10 years before I moved into the short-term rental space. And I have my MBA from Cornell. So really kind of finance heavy perspective that I took into short-term rentals. And that's how I built my portfolio. And one really cool thing about short-term rentals is there's no short-term rental degree. Like we all come in from different angles. And that's really one of the really cool things about this space is everyone comes in from a different perspective and they have a different way of doing things. And if you meet people and talk about your business, you always kind of learn something new. So, and that's why Jeremy, it's been great to have our conversations over the last months and years.
okay, and tell us. So one of the great things, yeah, short-term rentals, there is no short-term rental university. I mean, to be frank, probably the closest thing is this podcast, Mike's podcast, just following folk on social media. But also, one of the things that I want you to like touch on, or if we were going to go into Chang University today, is tell us about the specific tax benefits. So there are very unique tax advantages to short-term rentals. And I know that's something that from the get-go, you're really gung-ho on. But yeah, just to give the TLDR on unique tax advantages to short-term rentals, what's that look like?
Sure. And look, first off, businesses, everyone, you always have a silent partner in your business, and that's Uncle Sam. If you don't get the tax part right, they're going to take 40% plus of your income. So if you do that right in the beginning, you really can maximize your after-tax free cash flow significantly. So with short-term rentals, there are a number of really unique tax advantages that aren't available elsewhere. First and foremost, on rental arbitrage specifically, it's a rental activity, not an active activity. So as long as you meet the rules, you don't pay self-employment tax, which is 15.3%. So that's pretty material, right? If you can save 15% on your income immediately, that's great. And when you buy short-term rentals like I do, so I combine both strategies together. When you buy short-term rentals, it's the kind of the holy trinity of real estate investing. You get the appreciation from buying the property, you get the depreciation because you own the property, and you get higher cash flow from using Airbnb. And on the depreciation side, you want to maximize your bonus depreciation, which basically just means you get to pull forward all the depreciation expense in the properties that you buy using cost segregation studies. And that's a really good way of taking all that depreciation expense, applying it to your rental arbitrage income, and not pay and defer all your federal income tax liability until you sell those properties. So I know it's a handful, we can unpack that, but that is the crux of the strategies that we employ to be able to compound our cash flow quickly and buy more properties.
Okay. And we were talking about this not live beforehand, specific deals we've done and the appreciation. But what would, I mean, you bought, when did you start buying in the Smokies? And
2020.
if you were going to eyeball or estimate what you're, and it's hard because appreciation is something that until you sell the home, like there's really no, I mean, you can do a cash out refinance, and in a way, you're getting an appraisal value of the home. But really, in my opinion, until you sell it, like that's really when you can define the value of a property. But if you're going to just guesstimate across your 6 properties, what do you think your appreciation has looked like?
Well, I mean, we look at it, right? So we'll look at it kind of regularly to see where the comps are. I think the stuff that we bought, so we bought mostly in 20 and 21. And the stuff in 20 is probably 2x, 60 to 100% appreciation. So there's something that we bought for 550. The house next door sold for 950 about 2 months ago. It's probably come down a bit, but obviously that's 400K of appreciation in 3 years, which is obviously not something we underwrote to. We obviously just got lucky with the COVID bump that everyone has experienced. The latter purchases are probably up 20%, 25%. So it's been good. We had low rates in all of them too. So one thing we do as well is we only use fixed rate, 30-year fixed rate mortgages. We don't do DSCRs. We don't do hard money. There's enough volatility in short-term rentals already. And I very much believe I want to compound the equity appreciation over 30 years, over a long time frame. I don't intend on selling it. So I want to lock in that rate, and I don't want to have rates spike up like I have now, and then something else happens and I'm not able to retain my portfolio. So something else that we do that's maybe different from others.
Yeah, I would say it's different. So I have two loans that are adjustable rate mortgages that we got locked in at 3.7% for the first 5-year terms. And those are the only loans where we do principal prepay because we're locked in. It's a balloon payment at 5 years. So, and guys, for those of you guys, a fixed rate mortgage is essentially that monthly payment you get when you buy the property never changes. Like you're always going to be paying that same amount. Insurance and taxes might change,
Yep.
but that principal and interest is not going to change. Whereas an adjustable rate mortgages, generally you're locked in for a certain time period, and then it kind of changes or adapts based off whatever the Fed rates are at that time. So I have 2 adjustable rate mortgages where it's a 20-year amortization. So it essentially looks like a 20-year loan, but after 5 years, we got to pay it.
Yeah.
And generally, what folk do is they either refinance or they sell. So yeah, we're definitely that. As an investor, that was something we knew ahead of time, and those are the only properties where we're doing principal pay down. We made sure we wouldn't have a prepayment penalty. And I don't know if you've seen this, Mike, but probably a lot of folk with DSCR loans that might be adjustable rate or something where they have prepayment penalties.
So those are really tough, and which is why we want to get away from. We actively got away from them. So look, DSCRs, they're good if you need them.
What is a DSCR loan for those listening?
So DSCR loan is a debt service coverage ratio loan. That's what DSCR, debt service coverage ratio. So basically what it means is the people that lend you the money are going to lend to you based off of what they think the income of that property can produce. So that property, for example, can produce $100,000 a year, and then they would say they'll lend you 10 times against that money, then they'll lend you $1 million. So that's all it really means. It's a cash flow based loan versus a borrower kind of underwriting based loan, which they're looking at you as a borrower, and they're looking at the asset as a borrower, not you as the person. So these loans generally are more expensive, and they come with these things called prepayment penalties. So basically what it means is they don't want you to prepay the loan, and they make it very expensive for you to prepay the loan. You have to pay points if you prepay, so it limits your flexibility on what you can do with the property. And they also have the balloon payment. For folks that don't know, means you have to pay the entire balance of the loan at a certain point. And if your personal situation changes or rates are really, really high when that balloon comes, that's a problem, right? Maybe it's harder to sell. Maybe you have a lot of depreciation that you underwritten against that. You can't pay the recapture tax. Maybe the rates are too high and you don't have enough cash to pay it off. So it just kind of boxes you in a corner, and there's always reasons to do it, but I'm just talking about the reasons why we haven't done it historically.
Got it. So, guys, Mike is very kind of in a game where short-term rentals are new. There is a kind of unknowns. Every year is a new year. Mike and I were just talking about our portfolio composition, what some new things that we're seeing in different markets with different types of properties. Like there is no historical textbook that dates 300 years that explain what happens. So you just got to be thoughtful of like what is the risk you have and how do you mitigate that risk. Mike does that by only fixed interest rate debt. Also, for your arbitrage, I know you want to make sure you're paying back your furniture investment as
Yeah.
quick as possible.
Yeah. I think for the conceptually is I want to reduce the number of variables in my business as much as I can, right? There's already so many things that can go up and down to the extent that I can reduce the variables that can change on me that will have a meaningful impact on the business. I really try to do that. So with fixed rate mortgages for rental arbitrage, for example, having our rents capped at certain levels so landlord can't jack up the rate on us, right? Having options so we can renew the lease so they can't change their mind in the middle of it. So there are just things that as you're starting any business, specifically short-term rentals, right? To your point, there isn't a ton of history on here, so it is volatile. So to the extent that you can control some of that volatility with things that with your rent, with your mortgage payments, it's going to help strengthen the longevity of your business because just fewer things that can go wrong.
Got it. Okay. And sorry, I need to put on my do not disturb so I don't get any more WhatsApp notifications. So
It's all
one thing I want
it's all those bookings that you get, Jeremy.
exactly. Well, actually, WhatsApp is like my VA. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure you use your own messaging. Do you use Slack for your virtual assistant communication?
We use Discord. Discord's better than Slack.
Got it. Yeah, we use WhatsApp, and I just like WhatsApp. It's like what I do a lot of my texting on at this point, and probably should have a dedicated software platform directly for our business and our operations. But whatever, we do WhatsApp. Shout out WhatsApp. But what I want to get into right now is
Shout out Mark Zuckerberg.
I want to make this a little bit more fun. So I know we've been like pretty technical, DSCR and all that stuff, but something that I think is unique about short-term rental game and something that the Changs, so I want to get into the Changs, is that you do see a lot of like husband-wife combinations where they perfectly complement each other. Maybe the man, I'm just as not any assumptions, but just from what I've seen, sometimes maybe the man's kind of the underwriting, kind of making sure that the numbers pencil out. Whereas you have the wife might have more of a design feel. I know firsthand that I'm definitely not naturally a designer, but yeah, tell us about who is the other half to the Changs and how do you guys complement each other and how has you guys really grown your portfolio together?
Yeah, look, my wife Elizabeth, she was the one that actually got us into short-term rentals. She loves real estate. Her dad has a property here in New York, and that's how we started. We rented out one of his apartments when he had a vacancy in 2016 to test out this model, and then it's enabled us to grow our portfolio. Yeah, my wife, she's definitely. I'm not the design person. She is definitely the
I
person
didn't
that
want to make an assumption here. I didn't.
no, you're spot on. But I think it's really important to find your relative strengths and weaknesses. My wife actually is really good at underwriting and looking at markets. She's the one that's actually found all of our markets for us. So I think there
Sounds like we
are.
should have Liz on today. I don't know.
You definitely should. You definitely should. But she maybe less trained on the numbers, just given that's my background. But you can't train having an eye for real estate. I really believe that actually just like a innate kind of feel for the asset, what you can do with the space, what you can do with the property, a market, being able to talk to people, being able to just understand a context of the information that you're getting. So I think that's why we work well together because I am very numbers oriented and I understand the laws and the legal stuff behind it. She really understands the more qualitative side of this business. And I think that's why we've been able to work well together. So don't like you should definitely have her on the show because she'll give you her perspective.
Yeah, no, definitely need to have her. I know right now she's a little busy. When we went to Nashville together for a conference, they shared that she was pregnant with Chang number two.
Check
or
number
I guess
two.
Chang number 4 now, because you guys have one kid and second. So I'm sure she's a little preoccupied right now with getting ready for that one.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, having kids really changes your perspective too, and changes your risk profile, right? Like, if I was much younger and I didn't have a family, I probably would swing harder and actually take more and more risks. But like, I'm 43, I've had a career, and we want to build this business to create the cash flow so we can buy more properties. But we really want to do this in a very smart, risk-adjusted way. I don't really want to go up 100% and then down 30 and then up 20, and then you might actually end up in the same place, but that volatility, it just doesn't fit what we want in life. We want 10, 15% every year, just consistently compounding our cash flow, compounding our equity value versus these wild swings. So I think a lot of it's just kind of like where you are in life too. And that's the nice thing about real estate and owning your own business. You can kind of construct that risk profile to how you want it versus just having a job, which I don't know. And I think you have a perspective on this as well. Having a job, it might seem really safe. That check comes in every month. But now I'm working with students, and they're like, "Yeah, hey, I had a student come to me today say our office is going fully remote, and I'm going to be laid off in September. I didn't know." So what might seem safe in the short run actually is fairly risky in the long run. So again, I think just being very thoughtful of how you want to construct your life and your financial risk profile. What we really key on.
Yeah, definitely. And I was gonna make a joke. I'm still gonna make it, but if you guys look, Mike, if you're on YouTube, he does no gray hairs. He has none. He has a perfectly black head of hair. Maybe after kid two, but the way he's constructed his risk and his stress levels obviously is telling based off. I don't know. I'm not gonna put you on the spot with your hair routine, but
Thanks.
obviously I
Head and shoulders, man. That's what I use. And
got it. Well,
and having a low stress, or like not low stress, but just not having bad stuff happen. Just controlling the bad stuff that can happen to you.
got it. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll look back. We'll run this back when I'm 43 and we'll look at my head of hair and we'll see if the approach I took. You probably wouldn't want to get into a boat rental business if you were for your grayness sake, because I will say that is something that there's just a lot of variables, like in a boat rental, a lot more than a short term rental. Like short term rentals have a lot of variables, but when you learn how to handle them, it's not that daunting. I mean, would you
Yeah.
agree with that? And if you're going to say, so like, let's say for folk listening, you're looking to get going. Let's say you've decided you want to start with arbitrage. You want to test it out and then see if you want to like further buy or raise money or really go swing for that long-term equity play. What are those key variables? And I guess how do you handle them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right. Like short-term rentals, there's a lot of stuff going on, but you really can control that if you kind of find the right market, find the right property, build the right team. You really can control a lot of those variables. So if you want to get started right now, there are three key ways to get started. So you can co-host, which really just means that you're going to be someone's property manager for a fee. You can do rental arbitrage, which you're taking on more risks, right? You're responsible for that rent payment, but you capture all the upside on how much cash flow that property can generate. Or you can buy property, which is the most riskiest, right? Requires the most capital, but you not only get to enjoy all the upside and the cash flow, you also get to enjoy the appreciation in the property and the depreciation tax benefits. So that is kind of the spectrum of available avenues. So I would say,
Or glamping, throw a camper
you
out in the woods.
can throw yeah, exactly. And that's probably more owning, right? But it's more kind of, there's more variables there, right? Because you're not in a
Yeah.
city. You're responsible for your own water and
We had a tree fall on our ventilation fan
oh
the other
no,
day, and it just shattered and all the glass fell through
the stream.
the Airstream. Yeah. So fortunately, I have a great foreman on the property. That being shout out my Father's Day or my dad on Father's Day. That's what he was doing. But given that experience, we can go away from glamping. I just wanted to. I like to say there's four strategies, not just three. But okay, so co-hosting is something that you've stayed away from, and I kind of wanted just a quick like why arbitrage, why buying, why
Yeah.
not co-hosting?
Well, not why not? Like co-hosting just for me at that point in my life, just it didn't make sense. Like I didn't want to. It is more akin to a job than investing, in my opinion, because you have to get clients, and then you need to manage the clients and the guests. So I think a great co-hosting business is just working all with investors
Yep.
that understand that it's a business and not someone that owns like that's their primary home and they care about where the pillow is. Like those people just drive you crazy.
Yeah.
So
And I'll
that's
cut
why.
in there and say I initially started with a lot of co-hosting, and a lot of my clients initially were the homeowners, which at the time beggars can't be choosers. It was the lesser of two evils. If you're gonna, hey, I'm gonna have clients who are maybe a little bit emotional, a little bit controlling over their
Yeah,
properties and over who's coming in them, or if you have a boss. To me, the
yeah.
calculus there was like an actual boss who's deciding your salary on a like annual basis and your bonus and all that stuff. Lesser of two evils. But if you're at the point where Mike's at, where he's built a great business, you're at this point, you're just trying and you're really embodying that kind of freedom that you set out for.
Yeah, which is where like so I didn't want a boss. I didn't want like a bunch of bosses, so that's why we stayed away from that. But to be fair, we had two co-hosting things in New York that we did while we did it, but they were friends and they were all investors, and they never bought. And the deal was like, I'll do this for you, but you can't bother me about it. You just cash your check, and unless something goes wrong, and they're all really cool about it. Everyone made money, so everyone was happy. But going on to arbitrage, I really like that model because it takes more work ahead of time to get it right, like picking the right market, underwriting the building, negotiating with the landlord. But you only have like one person you have to deal with across all like 10, 20, 30 properties, right? And as long as you pay your rent and you do that work up front, you don't have to deal with that person anymore. All they care about is getting their rent and that you take care of their property. Everything else is like they don't actually want to hear from you. Neither you want to deal with them. So you can just focus on the guest experience, right? So, and I was always kind of good at under the numbers and research. So that suited my strengths a lot better. And so that's what we did, right? We went to render arbitrage. We had the capital to do the furniture, do the lease payments and all that stuff. And so that allowed us to grow quickly because we had one person to deal with and we could scale that portfolio and had really good cash flow as well. What sets us apart, I think, from others is okay, it's not a lot of people just do arbitrage. They can't kind of graduate to buying. And that it
And do
takes
you think,
just
and something I want to touch on here, not to cut you off, but this is just a thought I had, and actually I was going to probably ask you this: is it because a lot of times, from what I see with the folk who do purely arbitrage, at the end of the year they try to like get rid of their income, like they might prepay rent for 6 months, they might buy a ton of furniture, but they try to entirely like get rid of their taxable income, and then that stuff doesn't get added back when you then to get a loan to buy a house. Uh,
exactly. No, you hit it directly on the head, right? They try to do, they try
Bingo.
to, they, they try to contort themselves into unnatural positions to like get away
Not
from
pay
taxes.
taxes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like prepaying a ton of rent, like, and that's all cash that goes out, right? Rent, they buy cars, right? Like that they just do a bunch of things that like actually don't go into the business versus what I mean by kind of graduating is the using more sophisticated tax strategies, right? One is you need to qualify for a loan. So how do you kind of characterize that arbitrage income so that you can actually get loans based on that, right? There's actually an art to that. It's not that straightforward. And then how do you do that? How do you buy properties, which is a different underwriting than rental arbitrage, right? So you have to get that right. And then how do you
And
use
then depreciation
depreciation?
recapture. Bingo. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. How do you use depreciation in order to generate tax losses that aren't cash tax losses, they're non-cash tax losses, and how do you use that to apply against your rental arbitrage income? So there's just a lot of different steps that you have to not only know, right? It's one thing that you hear and understand, or you hear about, but it's just a completely different thing to actually understand it and find someone to execute that strategy for you. It takes time, it takes experience, and luckily, having the finance, the MBA from Cornell, the 10 years of investment banking experience, I really understood all those concepts. And applying them was easier for me than maybe the others, and that's why we don't have 100 arbitrage units. Like we don't want that. We're able to generate that cash flow that we want with a fewer number of properties because we focus on the higher end, better properties versus scale, and then being able to buy properties, which in my view, I think we both share this. If you want to build long-term wealth, you have to own the asset. Like the leases aren't going to get you to long-term wealth. They're a bridge to get you there, but it's just cash flow. They're not appreciating assets.
Yeah, and the Section 179 write-offs for sports cars and electronic vehicles, yeah, those are generally quite appreciative and expensive assets versus buying the house.
And they don't remember, they don't generate cash flow. Yeah, remember the two things. One, if you buy a car, they don't generate cash flow for you unless you're going to
Yeah.
put your Lamborghini or your Ferrari on Turo, which I probably wouldn't
or,
recommend
or
doing.
or you post on social media and that leads to
Right.
whatever
But it's a different business model, right? But
for
but
another
but
day.
but cars by themselves aren't cash flowing assets. They may retain their value, they may depreciate, but that's a different thing. They're not cash flowing assets. And two, I mean, they depreciate as well, right? You drive them, you use them, they depreciate. And there's actually there's insurance, there's storage, there's a lot of other costs that involve. So there's a fair amount of carrying costs. And once you sell it, then there's a depreciation recapture that you need to pay too. So there's just a lot of things that, and if an asset doesn't cash flow for you, eventually you're going to sell it, and then you're going to have to pay back all the depreciation. Versus a house, for example, can continue to cash flow for you,
And then
and
roll
when
over when you sell it
no,
to
yeah, you can do
1041.
1031 when you
1031.
sell it, or you can die. Eventually, if you die and you pass the house to your kid, then it's called a basis step up. Then they don't pay any taxes on where you bought it to the market value when you're dead. Like, if you, not to be morbid, but they don't pay any of that tax, and they don't pay any of that depreciation recapture. So there's just there's just so many more avenues to compound wealth more tax efficiently with real assets, with real estate, versus things that aren't real estate. And I'm not a car guy, so I'm picking on cars is easy,
We
but there's
also
other
live in
things
New
we
York
do.
City, so
Okay, fair enough.
makes it more difficult.
City bike and subway are sufficient for me, and Hertz
Well,
are
there
sufficient
a
for me.
city bike is literally a more practical thing to actually have. A city bike, $135 annual city bike membership can get you where you need to go better than a car in general.
Very true.
That is unique to New York. But we can digress away from cars here. But yeah, Mike doesn't have an order. And tell us, are you going to? I haven't heard of you buying a house yet this year. You've got to depreciate all this. I don't know. Have you kept a couple and not done cost segregation studies on a couple of the houses so you can do it this year, or are you about to buy? So what's your plan? 'Cause I know you just expanded arbitrage to several
Yeah.
properties, but yeah, tell us, what have you just done, and then what's your plan for the rest of the year?
Yeah, so we've gotten more arbitrage units. We need to buy. We've been
Needs to buy, guys. That's the place he's in. He's making too much money where he needs to buy so he can do a cost segregation study and then do bonus depreciation and bang, get rid of all that cash to Uncle Sam, but then have it re-added back when he applies for a loan next year.
You hit on it. There you go. But buying definitely is harder than it has been. We've been just kind of seeing the rates where they are, and see the Fed as of today, or as of last week, the Fed paused the interest rate hikes. The stock market's up 20%. We're in a bull market again. So
I haven't looked.
no, we are.
Oh,
We're
wow.
at 20%
Let me
from the
check my
lows right now.
portfolio.
Yeah.
Not that I have that much in stocks, but
No, but it's stocks are forward looking, rates are forward looking. So we hope that there's more flexibility on rates in the coming months. But that is our key focus now in the next 6 months, is to buy. And we want to continue to grow. We want to continue to grow the portfolio. I think that's the biggest thing. And of course, luckily, we've been able to generate free cash flow this year, taxable income this year, that we want to be able to write off against using bonus depreciation on new property that we buy. So 100%.
got it. So you want to buy right now.
Want to buy, we need to buy. We've been working hard to buy more. I think now that we're teaching folks how to run a short-term rental business, we actually are recording everything that we're doing on buying, so that people can watch our journey on how we buy. And hopefully there's some lessons that folks can tease out from our journey.
Got it. Yeah, and for folk listening, buying, in my opinion, is that long term. But really, like, yes, I think everyone during the last couple of years have had like a very specific like cash on cash. Oh, this needs to hit this cash on cash return in order for this to be a good investment. But I've seen people shift, not everybody, maybe Mike's in this mind where it's like, I've got to buy for the tax benefits. Like, I'm willing to, whereas you may have been like, I need 35% cash on cash return in 2020, 2021. Maybe you're like, I'm cool with 15% this year. Is that kind of where you're at, where you're willing to sacrifice the cash on cash a little bit in order to still get this majority of the tax benefits that you would have got before?
Yeah. So it's slightly more nuanced answer than that. We're definitely, our hurdle rate has come down. So we're willing, we were underwriting to 30%. I think we'll do something in 22, 25% now. So it's
Which is
come
still
down.
incredible. You're not doing that pretty much at many other investments or any. I
Yeah.
mean, right now it's hard to make 2% in most investments.
So what we try to do, so what I do is I sensitize the cost of financing, right? So I still want to make sure that it's a good property in a good location, good regulations, that it will continue to cash flow. But what I do is like, okay, well, rates are 8% right now. The last quote I got was 8.25 with 3 points up front. Made very expensive.
Oh
It's like,
goodness.
okay, well, this is very expensive,
Was
right?
that an investment loan?
As investment loan, 20 now investment loan.
Oh wow.
And I'm like, okay, well, my cash on cash return might be 17, for example, for this case, but it's still 17 and it's still going to cash flow for me, right? But I look down to like, okay, what if I reduce the rates to 5%? What six to 7.5, 6.5, 5.5, 4.5? Like I'll run that sensitivity analysis. So I'll know that, okay, like I do believe the cost of financing will go down in the next 5 years. And wherever that is, then I know that I can refi and then I'll be able to kind of hit those numbers. But in the interim, I'm able to enjoy those tax benefits as well. So
Yeah.
it's just a more nuanced way of looking at it now. We have to kind of be a little more creative. But I do believe in the adage: you marry the asset, right? You really marry the assets long term. I want to keep it forever. You date the rate, right? It's not. It may not. Or I may keep it for a long time. I may not. So money's your money is. You can change the rate that you have. You can't change the property that you bought.
Yeah. And I would say right now that's unique about this time. There's a lot of unique things. I mean, you could say that inventory is not as high as it should be because there's so many people locked in at those 3% interest rates. But what I've seen, so I'm closing on my property next Monday,
Oh wow, where?
and Carolina,
Okay,
back
Carolina.
back home sweet home. And then we bought in November, and yeah, definitely pretty high interest rates. But these were properties where I feel like 2020, 2021, they just would have been gone. Like they would have been listed and 5 offers in the next 24 hours. So you have to be ready with waiving inspections and waiving appraisals and literally willing to go 25K, 15K over asking in order to buy. Whereas now you can be more patient. And I like that. Maybe I'd have probably a few more gray hairs if we would have had 2020, 2021. Well, I don't have any gray hairs, knock on wood, yet. I don't know how this kind of divulged into a hair
Yeah.
podcast.
I mean, I'm having a good hair day, so maybe that's
Yeah.
why you're
I think that's what it was. But it was like times were kind of crazy. So we're having like a
crazy.
huge counter to that. But are you seeing that like properties just staying on the market longer and getting to like do a little bit more diligence before making offers?
Yeah, definitely longer, definitely more time. It's not as heated, but it's still really competitive. It's not. I don't think it's a seller's market. It's still. I'm sorry. I don't think it's a buyer's market. It's just. I would term it as less of a seller market versus a
Yeah.
year ago.
I
But
did get both of the property or this one and last one, 25K under asking.
oh, there you go.
Uh,
Good for you. Congrats.
thank you.
What rate did you get
Like
here?
7.
Okay, good. Well, good.
Yeah.
I need to call your mortgage person. um,
Shout out, Brian.
Shout out Brian. Okay, I know. Oh, I know Brian. Maybe I'll give him a call. It's definitely more. It's definitely more competitive. I mean, sorry, less competitive out there. They have just put far fewer homes for sale. So you got to be ready. For us, a lot of it, we found one market that we like. There's just not a lot of inventory there, but it's definitely a lot more work to it. It's a lot more work to get things to pencil. So there's still opportunity out there, just not as it's like most of life, right? Now that people have better understand short-term rentals, there's just more competition. So I think people like us that's been in the space for longer, we have to upgrade our game, or we're not going to be. We won't. Our advantage against newcomers aren't going to be as significant.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to get into that. We have a few minutes left here, but something that have definitely personally tried to do is just level up the listings. Like they got to continually be nicer and nicer. And like
Yeah,
right now, I've probably done more design revisions on this newest house than like I've ever done before. Like to be frank, before I'd probably like, it looks good enough. Let's do it. Now I'm like, nah, we got to really make this like perfect. Like every room has to be perfect. Are you kind of seeing that too? Like the emphasis
yeah,
on design is more and more important.
100%. The last apartments that we've gotten way higher. We put more money in there actually on design, on amenities. It's just you have to level up your game. So it's definitely more. I would say 3 years ago you could kind of put anything on Airbnb and it would still do fine. Now it's absolutely not the case. There's still definitely money to be made there, but you have to
You
operate
got to
it.
be a pro.
You got to be a pro. That trend is going to continue. It's going to get more and more competitive. You're going to have to like actually have good listings, good amenities, keep your operations tight, fix the days are long gone where you can just go to IKEA and spend $4,000 to furnish a unit and have it make money. Those days are gone. You have to really put some effort, design sense into your properties to make money. But there's still plenty of opportunity out there. I very much believe that.
Yeah, well, we're both. I mean, you just expanded. I'm expanding. We just know, like, yeah, in the back of our head, like, damn, it was really freaking easy. And now you just got to keep sharpening those pencils, and you've got to execute like a precision jet fighter. But what I want to do, and this kind of like how I end the shows, is first, normally, I feel like I know you so well. I want to give some pro tips that Mike has given me before I ask him what his pro tips are for those listening. But LastPass, Mike, I was having issues and like little things like when you have, so we have virtual assistants who manage the day-to-day operations of our business. And I was like, oh, how do you deal with all these passwords? like it's like, this was new to me. Like I was just texting them the passwords. I'm like, I'm kind of worried they kind of have all my passwords for everything. So I asked
Yeah.
Mike how he deals with that. And he just gave the simplest answer. He just said LastPass. I'm like, oh, what is that? Bang, password manager. I didn't even know those existed.
It's
I
five
didn't even
dollars
know.
a month. It's $5 a month. It'll save you. Yeah. I'm glad it
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah. Pro tip. But yeah, give another pro tip for those listening.
Pro tip. Well, look, use AirDNA when you're underwriting properties. I know it's expensive. I don't make any money from them, so this is not a promotion for them. I've looked at all the different platforms. I do believe that AirDNA is a great platform to underwrite your properties. And Jeremy, I know you have BNBCalc that uses AirDNA and it has the models and everything in front of that. So great tool. But I like the underlying data in AirDNA. We've started using it in 2018. I met all the people there. It's expensive for a reason. It takes time to have good data. So utilize Airbnb, utilize AirDNA, utilize the tools out there to help you make a better investment decision. Because what you don't want to do is spend all this time and effort and money and like not do the right work up front in underwriting a property, underwriting the market. So that's my pro tip. Because like that for me has been one of the key drivers of my success is really understanding numbers and getting the good markets, getting good properties. And even though if I mess up on design or mess up other little things, if I pick the right property, then I have that tailwind behind me that will cover up those mistakes. So for folks out there that are looking to get into business, do the work up front. It will save you in the long term.
Awesome. Got it. So they have some very tangible look at the data, make sure that you're underwriting like a champ. So Mike or like TR like the best. That's your the name of your podcast. But yeah, how can folk find you if they want to reach out or they want to hear and see what you're doing?
You can find me on Instagram. My username is Michael Chang BNB, MICHAEL CHANG BNB. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me there. And Jeremy, thank you for having me on the show.
Mike, thanks so much for coming. Well, guys, that's a wrap. Thank you all for joining. Stay tuned for next week.